I stared at the half-empty wine glass on our granite counter, watching a single drop slide down its curve. Such a small thing, that drop, but it held my whole world in its descent. The lipstick mark on the rim wasn't mine. Wrong shade, wrong story. My name is Ruby, and 10 minutes ago, I was just a tired mother trying to get through another Tuesday night. Now I'm someone else entirely. Sarah's finally down. I called out to Nate, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. The silence that followed felt deliberate, like a held breath. I heard him shuffling papers in his home office, probably pretending to work late again. The same excuse he'd been using for months now. Thanks, babe. I've got this big presentation tomorrow. The wine glass caught the kitchen light, throwing prisms across the wall. I touched the stem, wondering how many nights it had sat here, waiting for me to notice. How many nights had I walked past, too busy with our daughter to see what was right in front of me? Your mother called earlier, I said, moving toward his office. She wants us over for dinner on Sunday. Did you tell her we're busy? I pushed his door open. He didn't look up from his laptop, his face illuminated by the blue screen glow. The same face I'd woken up to for 8 years, now somehow foreign. Actually, I told her we'd love to come. His fingers paused over the keyboard. Ruby, you know I have that thing. What thing, Nate? The same thing that kept you at the office until midnight last Thursday. The wine glass was still in my hand. I set it down on his desk, right next to his mouse pad. The same thing wearing MAC Ruby Woo lipstick? His face didn't crumple with guilt like I expected. Instead, it hardened like cement setting. You're being paranoid. Am I? Because I just got off the phone with Tom from accounting. He said you left the office at 5 today. 3 hours ago. My voice stayed low. Sarah was sleeping just down the hall. Where were you, Nate? He stood up slowly, towering over me like he used to do when we argued about bills or his mother's constant interference. I don't have to explain myself to you. Actually, you do. You owe me that much. I owe you. He laughed. But it wasn't the laugh I fell in love with in college. This was something else. Sharp, dismissive. Look at yourself, Ruby. When's the last time you wore makeup? Or bought new clothes? You spend all your time with Sarah, acting like some martyr. Don't you dare. My fingers curled into fists. Don't you dare make this about me being a mother to our child. His phone buzzed on the desk. We both looked at it. A text message lit up the screen, missing you already. Last night was. The rest disappeared into preview limbo. But it was enough. The contact name read Olivia B. I can't explain, he started, but I was already backing away. Save it for Sunday, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. I'm sure your parents would love to hear all about Olivia B. His face went pale. You wouldn't. Watch me. I turned and walked out, each step measured and precise. Sarah's room was dark except for her nightlight, casting star patterns on the ceiling. I stood in her doorway, watching her tiny chest rise and fall. Ruby, Nate called from behind me, his voice urgent now. Let's talk about this. But I was done talking. Done pretending. Done being the perfect wife who looked the other way. I had something better to be now. A mother protecting her child from lies. A woman protecting herself from betrayal. And soon, very soon, I'd be something else too. The architect of Nate Parker's complete and total destruction. James's spare bedroom smelled like fresh laundry and old books. I sat cross-legged on the bed, watching Sarah crawl across the floor, chasing dust motes in the afternoon light. 3 days since I'd walked out. 3 days of missed calls and increasingly desperate texts from Nate. You can't hide here forever, little sister. James leaned against the doorframe, coffee mug in hand. Though I admit, watching you plot revenge while changing diapers has a certain charm. I'm not plotting revenge. I picked up Sarah as she grabbed for an electrical outlet. I'm planning justice. Same thing, different font. He sat beside me, the bed creaking under his weight. Linda called again. My stomach tightened. Of course she had. Nate's mother never could resist meddling. What did she want? To remind you about Sunday dinner. Said, and I quote, family problems should stay within family walls. He mimicked her precise, clipped tone perfectly. I snorted. Funny how those walls only exist when they're protecting Nate. Sarah squirmed in my arms, reaching for pretending everything's fine just to keep the peace. My phone buzzed, another text from Nate. Please come home. We can work this out. James read it over my shoulder. Have you told Maya yet? No. The guilt of keeping this from my best friend gnawed at me. She's been so excited about her promotion. I didn't want to dump this on her. Ruby. James's voice carried that big brother weight I'd known all my life. You need your people around you right now. The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Sarah clapped her hands, delighted by the sound. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of Linda's silver Mercedes in the driveway. Speak of the devil, James muttered. Want me to send her away? I stood up, shifting Sarah to my hip. No. It's time she heard the truth about her precious son. Linda Parker's perfectly coiffed appearance hadn't changed since the day she'd first disapproved of me dating her son. She swept into James's living room like she owned it, designer handbag clutched like a shield. Ruby darling. Her smile was brittle as old china. This little vacation has gone on long enough, don't you think? Has it? I kept my voice level. How long should finding out about your son's affair take? The color drained from her face. I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding I cut in was me thinking Nate was capable of being faithful. She sank onto James's couch, her perfectly manicured hands clasped tight. These things, they happen in marriages. Surely you don't want to destroy your family over one indiscretion. James made a disgusted sound from the doorway. Jesus, Linda. Stay out of this, James. She turned back to me, her voice honey-sweet. Think of Sarah. She needs her father. She needs honest people in her life. I held my daughter closer. Not liars and cheats. And what about Sunday dinner? Linda's voice sharpened. The whole family will be there. Do you really want to air your dirty laundry in front of everyone? A slow smile spread across my face, the kind that would have worried me if I'd seen it in the mirror. Actually, Linda, I think Sunday dinner is exactly what we need. The whole family should know exactly who Nate really is. You wouldn't dare. Her mask slipped, showing the fear beneath. Watch me. I walked to the front door and opened it. Now get out of my brother's house. After she left, James whistled low. You know this means war, right? I watched Linda's Mercedes pull away, thinking of the wine glass of Olivia B's text message. Of all the nights I'd spent alone with Sarah while Nate worked late. Good, I said and meant it. Let's give them something worth fighting about. Maya's office felt too bright, too normal for the conversation we were having. She sat across from me at her desk, her new executive nameplate catching the afternoon sun, while I scrolled through the screenshots James had helped me collect from Nate's cloud backup. 6 months. Maya's voice cracked. The receipts go back 6 months. Restaurants, hotel rooms. She stopped, staring at a particular charge. The 4 seasons? On your anniversary. I nodded, my throat too tight for words. The same night I'd been home with a colicky Sarah, thinking Nate was working late on the Peterson account. I should have told you sooner. Maya pushed away from her desk. I saw them once at Café Rouge. I thought, God, I convinced myself it was a business meeting. Everyone wants to believe the best version of the story. I closed the laptop, unable to look at any more evidence of my husband's betrayal. Even me. Maya's office door opened without a knock. Thompson, we need the Q3 projections. The voice stopped cold. It was Olivia Brooks, holding a stack of reports, wearing the same shade of lipstick I'd found on my wine glass. The air left the room. Sorry, Olivia said quickly. I didn't realize you had a meeting. No. I stood slowly. You're exactly who I needed to see. Maya's eyes widened as she made the connection. Ruby. How long? I asked Olivia. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. How long have you been sleeping with my husband? The reports slipped from her hands, scattering across the floor. I don't know what you're talking about. The 4 seasons, June 15th. I stepped closer. Our anniversary. Was that your idea or his? Color drained from her face. He told me you were separated. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere dark inside me. Separated? I was home with our 1-year-old daughter while he was. I stopped, watching her face crumple. You really believed him? He said you wouldn't let him see Sarah. Olivia's voice shrank. That you were using her to control him. The fury that had been building since that wine glass discovery suddenly crystallized into something colder, clearer. Maya, could you give us a minute? Maya hesitated, then nodded, closing the door behind her. Sit down, I told Olivia. Let me tell you about the man you've been sleeping with. 20 minutes later, I walked out of Maya's office, leaving behind a sobbing Olivia and 6 months' worth of carefully documented lies. My phone buzzed, another text from Nate. Please, Ruby. I'll do anything to fix this. I smiled, thinking of the recording app that had been running during my entire conversation with Olivia. You will, I whispered to myself. You absolutely will. Maya caught up with me at the elevator. That was. She shook her head. I've never seen you like this. Neither has Nate. The elevator doors opened. That's why he won't see it coming. What are you planning? I thought of Sunday dinner, of Linda's perfectly arranged table settings and Tom's quiet disappointment in his son. I thought of Sarah, who deserved better than a father who could lie so easily, who could turn his own daughter into a weapon against her mother. Justice, I said, stepping into the elevator. Or revenge. At this point, they look exactly the same. Ruby, Maya held the door. Just be careful. Revenge can change people. I'm counting on it. The doors closed on her worried face. Outside, the city hummed with afternoon traffic. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Linda. Whatever you're planning for Sunday, don't think of your daughter. I was thinking of Sarah, of the moment she'd be old enough to understand what her father had done, what kind of man he really was, of the example I needed to set, not of forgiveness or turning the other cheek, but of standing up, of refusing to let someone else write your story. I typed back a single word, soon. Then I called James. I need your help with something for Sunday dinner. Please tell me it doesn't involve actual murder, he said. Nothing so merciful, I replied, watching the sun sink behind the city's skyline. We're going to tell the truth. The manila envelope sat between us on Tom Parker's desk like a loaded gun. He hadn't opened it yet, just stared at it with the same stern expression he'd worn through 30 years as a judge. You understand what you're asking? His voice carried the weight of countless difficult decisions. Once this starts, Ruby, there's no going back. I touched the envelope's edge. Inside were bank statements, hotel receipts, photos from private investigators. 6 months of Nate's carefully hidden second life. I understand perfectly. Linda will never forgive you. Linda never approved of me in the first place. I met his gaze. But you've always been fair, Tom. That's why I'm here. He leaned back in his leather chair, studying me. Why not just divorce him? Take half and start fresh. Because half isn't enough. The words tasted like copper in my mouth. He needs to lose everything, just like I did. Tom opened his desk drawer and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Before you commit to this, there's something you should see. My hands shook as I read the document. It was a loan application, dated 3 weeks ago. Nate's signature at the bottom, requesting to mortgage our house. The house I'd helped pay for, the home where Sarah took her first steps. He doesn't have the authority, I said. My name's on the deed. Look at the second page. There it was, my signature, perfectly forged. The date, the notary stamp, all of it flawless. How did you get this? The bank manager is an old friend. Tom's voice softened. He thought something seemed off, asked me to look into it. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the armrest of my chair. The money, where did it go? That's the interesting part. Tom handed me another paper. A down payment on a condo. Not in his name, though. Olivia Brooks. The name felt like poison on my tongue. He's been planning to leave you, Ruby. Tom's words fell like stones in still water. The affair, the money, it's all been leading to this. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me. Harsh, unfamiliar. So while I've been plotting my revenge, he's been orchestrating your destruction. Tom finished. The Sunday dinner announcement wasn't going to be about his affair. It was going to be about our separation. The pieces clicked into place. He was going to blindside me in front of everyone. Make you look unstable, emotional. Tom nodded. Build a case for full custody of Sarah. The room went very quiet. Outside his study window, I could see Linda in the garden, preparing for Sunday's dinner like nothing was wrong. Like her son wasn't trying to destroy me. What are my options? My voice sounded distant, cold. Legally? We can fight the forgery, press charges. Tom tapped the manila envelope. Use your evidence to counter his claims. And unofficially, he studied me for a long moment. You could let him think he's winning. Let him make his announcement on Sunday. And then, a small smile crossed his face. You could show everyone exactly who Nate Parker really is. I stood up, gathering the papers. Why are you helping me? He's your son. Because 30 years on the bench taught me something. Tom rose, walking me to the door. Sometimes justice needs a little help finding its way. As I left, Linda called out from the garden. Ruby? Is everything all right? I waved, the perfect daughter-in-law smile plastered on my face. Just discussing Sunday dinner with Tom. It's going to be quite memorable. Walking to my car, I called James. Change of plans. We're not just exposing the affair anymore. What do you mean? I thought of the forged documents, the secret condo, the carefully orchestrated plan to take my daughter away. We're going to let Nate think he's won. Right up until the moment we destroy him completely. Ruby. James hesitated. Are you sure about this? I watched Linda pruning her roses, preparing for a family dinner that would shatter her perfect world. He tried to take everything from me, James. Now I'm going to return the favor. Linda's dining room gleamed like a stage set, crystal glasses catching the late afternoon sun. Sarah sat in her high chair, happily mashing peas while the adults around the table performed their usual Sunday ritual of polite conversation and hidden daggers. Ruby dear. Linda passed the roast with a brittle smile. You look tired. Is everything all right at James's? Before I could answer, Nate cleared his throat. Actually, Mother, I have an announcement to make. My hand tightened around my wine glass. Across the table, Tom caught my eye, a slight nod passing between us. Ruby and I. Nate paused for effect, reaching for Olivia's favorite dramatic flair. We've been having problems. Linda gasped perfectly on cue. Oh, darling. I've tried to make it work. His voice cracked with practiced emotion. For Sarah's sake. But Ruby's become unstable. I took a slow sip of wine, letting the silence stretch. James shifted in his chair beside me, but I touched his knee under the table. Wait. The thing is, Nate continued, I've already filed for separation. And given Ruby's recent behavior, I'll be seeking full custody of Sarah. The room went still. Linda dabbed at her eyes with her napkin while Tom studied his plate. This was Nate's moment, his carefully orchestrated destruction of my life. I set down my glass. Are you finished? Ruby, he started, but I cut him off. Because I have an announcement too. I reached into my purse, pulling out an envelope. About the condo you bought for Olivia. The color drained from his face. What? The one you paid for by forging my signature on a loan application. I slid the documents across the table. Fraud is such an ugly word, isn't it? Linda snatched up the papers. These must be fake. Like the signature? I smiled. The bank manager didn't think so. Neither did the police when I filed charges this morning. Nate stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward. You're lying. Sit down, son. Tom's voice carried the weight of 3 decades on the bench. There's more. I pulled out my phone, playing the recording from Maya's office. Olivia's voice filled the room. He said you were separated. He told me you wouldn't let him see Sarah. Turn it off, Nate demanded. Why? This is my favorite part. I let it continue. He promised we'd be together. Said once he got custody. Linda's face had gone ash white. Nate, tell me this isn't true. It's not what you think. Then explain the hotel receipts. I laid them out like playing cards. The 4 seasons on our anniversary. The weekend in Vegas when I had Sarah in the hospital with pneumonia. You vindictive bitch. He lunged across the table, but James was faster, catching his arm. Touch her, James said quietly, and fraud will be the least of your charges. Sarah started crying, the tension finally breaking through her toddler bubble. I lifted her from the high chair, holding her close. You want custody? I faced Nate. Fine. Explain to a judge how you committed fraud. Explain the affair, the secret condo, the plans to abandon your family. Explain why you weren't there when your daughter was sick because you were too busy fucking your mistress. Language. Linda protested weakly. No, Mother. I turned to her. For once, You're going to hear the truth about your precious son." "This isn't over," Nate snarled. "Actually, it is." Tom stood up, placing a hand on my shoulder. "The police will be here soon. I called them before dinner." The sound of sirens grew in the distance. Nate's face contorted, reality finally crashing through his carefully constructed lies. "You planned this," he whispered. "All of it." I bounced Sarah gently as she calmed down. "No, nothing. You planned this. I just changed the ending." The police lights painted the dining room in alternating red and blue. Linda sobbed into her napkin while Tom went to answer the door. James stayed close, watching Nate for any sudden moves. "Was it worth it?" I asked Nate as the officers entered. "Destroying everything for her?" He didn't answer, couldn't answer, as they read him his rights in his mother's perfect dining room, surrounded by the wreckage of his perfect lies. The courthouse bathroom mirror reflected a stranger, someone harder, colder than the woman I used to be. Outside, I could hear the muffled sounds of reporters gathering for Nate's arraignment. 3 weeks since the Sunday dinner explosion, and everything was falling apart in ways I hadn't anticipated. Maya appeared behind me, her reflection grim. "Olivia's going to testify for him." The news hit like a physical blow, but I kept my face neutral. "Of course she is. He probably promised her everything again." "Ruby." Maya hesitated. "There's more. The fraud charges might not stick." I gripped the sink's edge. "What?" "His lawyer's arguing that as your husband, he had implicit authority to act on your behalf. And with Olivia backing his story." The door swung open. Linda Parker stood there, perfectly composed in designer black, like she was attending a funeral instead of her son's arraignment. "Could we have a moment?" she asked Maya, who glanced at me before leaving. I turned back to the mirror, reapplying lipstick I didn't need. "Come to defend your precious son again?" "No." She moved beside me, our reflections a study in contrasts. "I came to give you this." She placed an envelope on the counter. Inside was a check with more zeros than I'd ever seen. "What is this?" "Walk away." Her voice was soft but firm. "Drop the charges, take Sarah, start fresh somewhere else." I laughed, the sound echoing off the tile walls. "You think you can buy me off?" "I think I can save my granddaughter from watching her parents destroy each other." She met my eyes in the mirror. "You've made your point, Ruby. You've hurt him. Isn't that enough?" "Enough." The check crumpled in my fist. "He tried to take everything from me, and now you're trying to take everything from him. Where does it end?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed, a text from James. "Turn on the news." "Now." Linda's phone chimed simultaneously. We both reached for our devices, pulling up different news feeds showing the same headline, "Parker Financial under investigation for fraud." My stomach dropped. The company where I'd worked, where I'd met Nate, where half our savings were invested, was being investigated by the SEC. "Oh God." Linda's hand flew to her mouth. "Tom's retirement fund." The implications hit me like waves. Not just our money, but Tom and Linda's. The other employees. Hundreds of families affected because I'd pushed for an investigation into Nate's fraud, which had led investigators to dig deeper into the company's finances. "This is what revenge gets you," Linda whispered. "It spreads like poison, hurting everyone it touches." The courthouse bathroom suddenly felt too small, too bright. Outside, I could hear the growing crowd of reporters, hungry for blood, any blood. My phone buzzed again, Maya, this time. "They're saying you knew. That you were part of it." Of course they were. I was the whistleblower, the vengeful wife, the perfect scapegoat. Nate would use this, twist it somehow. He always did. "What are you going to do?" Linda asked, watching me carefully. I looked at my reflection again, at the stranger I'd become. Sarah's face flashed in my mind, not just her present, but her future. Growing up with this scandal, this hatred between her parents, this endless cycle of revenge. "I could still testify," Linda said quietly, "about what I knew, what I suspected about Nate's activities at the company." I turned to her, surprised. "You'd do that? To your own son? To save my granddaughter from this mess?" "Yes." She straightened her spine. "But only if you end this war now, before it destroys everyone we love." The courtroom doors would open in 10 minutes. Outside, reporters waited to capture every moment of the Parker family's destruction. Nate would be led in, handcuffed, ready to play his part as the misunderstood victim. And I had to decide, continue pushing until everything burned down around us, or find another way through the ashes. My phone buzzed one final time. James again. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. I took a deep breath, staring at the stranger in the mirror until she started to look familiar again. Then I made my choice. The visiting room at the county jail smelled like industrial cleaner and despair. Nate sat across from me, orange jumpsuit hanging loose on his frame, 2 weeks of stubble darkening his jaw. Between us, a stack of papers waited for signatures. You're really doing this? His voice rasped with disuse. Dropping the charges? I aligned the papers perfectly, each corner matching. Yes, but my terms are non-negotiable. He leaned forward, eyes fever bright. I knew you'd come around. Once we get past this. Stop. I pushed the divorce papers toward him. This isn't reconciliation, Nate. This is mercy. His face hardened. Mercy? You destroyed everything. No. I kept my voice steady. You did that when you forged my signature. When you planned to take Sarah. When you let your greed infect the whole company. I was trying to give us a better life. Us? I laughed. Or you and Olivia? His flinch told me everything. She won't return my calls. Of course not. The SEC is investigating her too. I tapped the papers. Sign these and I'll drop the fraud charges. Linda will testify about the company's broader issues, keeping you out of that investigation. And Sarah? Joint custody. The words tasted like ash. But you'll never live with her. Never make decisions about her future. Those rights are mine. He picked up the pen, then paused. Why are you really doing this? I thought of Linda in the courthouse bathroom, of Maya's worried face, of James's unwavering support, of Sarah, who deserved better than parents locked in eternal war. Because revenge doesn't end, Nate. It just keeps taking and taking until there's nothing left. So you're choosing to be noble? His lip curled. The perfect martyr? No. I stood up, gathering my purse. I'm choosing to be free. Sign the papers or I'll see you in court. He grabbed my wrist. Wait. The guard stepped forward, but I held up my hand. It's okay. Nate's grip loosened. I never meant. I didn't want. I know. And suddenly I did know. How small he was, how desperate and afraid. How empty his life had become chasing things that didn't matter. That's what makes it worse. He signed the papers with shaking hands. Each scratch of the pen felt like closing a door, sealing off the past. What will you tell Sarah? He asked as I gathered the documents. The truth. When she's old enough to understand it. And what truth is that? I paused at the door. That her father loved her, but forgot how to love anything else. That sometimes the greatest act of strength is choosing to stop fighting. Ruby. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. I know that too. I turned back one last time. But sorry doesn't fix what's broken. It just lets us walk away from the wreckage. Outside, James waited by his car. You okay? I handed him the signed papers, watching through the window as guards led Nate back to his cell. I thought this would feel different. More satisfying. Because it's not revenge anymore. Because it's not anything anymore. I got into the car, buckling my seatbelt with steady hands. It's just over. Where to? James started the engine. I thought of Sarah waiting at Maya's, of the apartment I'd found across town, of the job interview lined up for next week. Of all the pieces of a new life waiting to be assembled. Forward, I said and meant it. Just forward. As we pulled away from the jail, my phone buzzed with a text from Linda. Thank you. I didn't respond. Some thanks, like some apologies, were better left in silence. Some victories looked more like surrender. And sometimes the price of betrayal wasn't paid in revenge, but in the quiet courage it took to walk away. James turned onto the highway, and I didn't look back. There was nothing there I needed to see anymore. Sarah's laughter echoed through the park as she chased pigeons across the grass, her tiny legs carrying her faster each day. The autumn air held that perfect crispness that made everything feel possible. She's getting so big. Maya handed me a coffee, settling beside me on the bench. Starting to look more like you. Thank God for small mercies. I watched Sarah wobble and catch herself, proud and determined. Just like her mother, James always said. My phone buzzed. Tom's number. I'd been expecting this call since Nate's release last week. Ruby? He's asking to see Sarah. The old anger didn't rise like it used to. The custody agreement. I know. Tom's voice carried the weight of everything we'd been through. He's different now. The program. It helped. I watched Sarah crouch down to examine a fallen leaf, her whole world contained in its simple beauty. What do you think? I think. He paused. I think sometimes people deserve a chance to prove they've changed. But it's your call. Maya squeezed my hand as I ended the call. She'd been there through everything. The divorce, the company's collapse, the slow rebuilding of a life I never knew I wanted. You don't owe him anything, she said. I know. I stood up, walking toward Sarah. But maybe I owe her the chance to decide for herself someday. Sarah ran to me, leaf held high like a trophy. Mama, look. I scooped her up, breathing in her baby shampoo smell. Beautiful. Should we save it? She nodded seriously, tucking it into my jacket pocket. Over her shoulder, I saw Linda approaching across the grass, hesitant but determined. I can ask her to leave, Maya offered. No. I set Sarah down. Go play with Aunt Maya for a minute, sweetheart. Linda looked older, the past year etched into new lines around her eyes. I wasn't sure you'd want to see me. I wasn't either. I touched the leaf in my pocket. But here we are. Tom told you about Nate? Yes. She watched Sarah playing with Maya. He's not asking for forgiveness. Good. Because I'm not offering it. No. She smiled slightly. You're stronger than that now. A memory surfaced. Linda in that courthouse bathroom, offering me a check to walk away. We all are. Ruby. She turned to me, eyes bright. Thank you. For stopping when you did. For choosing peace over punishment. I didn't do it for him. Or you. I know. She reached out, tentative, and squeezed my arm. That's why it mattered. Sarah's squeal of delight drew our attention. She'd found another leaf. This one bright red against the green grass. Would you like to join us? I surprised myself by asking. We're getting ice cream after. Linda's breath caught. I'd like that very much. As we walked toward Maya and Sarah, my phone buzzed again. A text from Nate. I understand if you say no. I looked at Sarah, at her joy in simple things, at her ability to love without conditions or consequences, at the future stretching before her, unmarred by the shadows of the past. Next weekend, I typed back. 1 hour. Maya's place. His response came quickly. Thank you. I didn't reply. Some things didn't need words anymore. Some wounds healed better in silence. Some victories weren't about winning or losing, but about finding the strength to begin again. Sarah ran back to me, another leaf in her small fist. For you, Mama. I took it. This simple gift, this reminder that beauty could grow from broken things. That sometimes the price of betrayal wasn't paid in revenge or forgiveness, but in the quiet courage to keep living, keep loving, keep believing in the possibility of better days. Thank you, baby. I tucked both leaves into my pocket, safekeeping these moments of grace. Let's go get that ice cream. We walked together, mother, daughter, friend, family both old and new, into whatever came next, carrying our scars like medals, our hopes like promises, our love like the leaves Sarah collected, imperfect, temporary, but beautiful in their own way.